You're all good.
Thanks, Jesse. Good evening again. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. This is the April meeting of Manhattan Community Boards for ACES committee. We have a pretty packed agenda tonight, so we're going to get right into it. But as a friendly reminder, we continue to meet virtually, which we have permission to do from Albany. And we'll begin with the same thing that we do at the beginning of every meeting, with an opportunity for anyone who would like to speak for up to 2 minutes. And then we have presentations lined up from DYCD to talk about ESOL programs and response to the recent or not so recent increase in folks who are new to the country and are coming to, and in some cases staying in New York City. Then we have a presentation from NYU on the Preventative Education Partnership, specifically preventing teen fentanyl overdoses. And then we have an update from West 45th Street Clean Curb Program. Jesse, am I remembering correctly that we also added in folks from New York Public Library, or are they connected to this second item?
We did add them in, and I put them in as the second item since it probably had so much overlap.
Thank you for clarifying that. So we will try to keep it moving, but also give every topic its merited amount of time. To kick things off, if anyone would like to speak during the public session, you can indicate that now by using the raised hand feature in Zoom, which should be at the bottom of the screen. Give it a couple of seconds, and if I don't see anyone, we will move on.
I have Judith Dayhill in there, so I will bring her over.
Wonderful. Hello, Judith. Welcome back. Nice to see you. You'll have 2 minutes from whenever you begin.
Thank you. So nice to see so many friendly faces. I don't know if I'm going, video. There we go. Start video. I haven't done this in a while. Anyway, thank you for letting me speak. I know that our president of the Chelsea Garden Club has spoken at the full community board, and maybe some of you have heard her, Missy Adams. We were talking about how upset the Chelsea Garden Club is at the Department of Sanitation is putting their garbage pails in our tree pits. It's ruining the gardens. It's ruining the litter. People are littering everywhere. And as a street life, I wondered if this would be the forum to bring this issue to the community board, because we would like, I know there's a meeting tomorrow at City Hall with the Department of Sanitation to talk about issues, but I was trying to get, it seems it's only done in Chelsea, all up down 8th Avenue, 9th Avenue. The garbage pails are put in the tree pits, not on the streets, and the Chelsea Garden Club is really fit to be tied. So if you could maybe help us with this, maybe write a letter to them or do something, we would be so grateful, because we work really hard. Their Department of Environmental Protection tree pits, they're to catch the water, to prevent the overflowing of the streets, to catch the air, so it cleans the air for our community. There's like many reasons why these garden pits should not have garbage pails in them. And I was just looking forward to some help in trying to reach out to the Department of Sanitation. We've done everything. We've written letters, we've written 311 complaints. We've done so many things, and there's nothing but aggression and aggravation from the Department of Sanitation. So we're just looking for a little help from the ACES community. Thank you.
Thank you, Judith. It looks like Jesse has his hand up, and you want to respond?
Yeah, hi Judith, nice to see you. Yeah, so we that representative did speak at the full board. We've been in contact. I've been in contact with her since then, and I'll be circling back with Jordan from Eric's office, who I know is working on it as well. And so I think we'll take it from the district level to begin with, and if we don't feel like we're getting the response that we should be, we'll obviously, I think we can certainly escalate it to an ACES committee topic. But I think we can probably handle this amongst Eric's office, my office, and the superintendent there.
Sounds good. Leslie, I see your hand as well. Was there something you
I
wanted
have a
to add?
question. I have a question for Jesse, actually. Jesse, did they give any reason why they're doing that to
No,
this, or did they?
I haven't spoken directly with the superintendent yet. I just know like I said, I was in touch with the person that spoke at the full board that first raised this issue that Judith is talking about. And I've been circling back with Jordan, who's also working on it currently. So.
We'll keep an eye out, Jesse, for whether this should be something that we add to the agenda in an upcoming meeting for discussion and then potentially to vote on a letter. Thank you for raising it, Judith. We've done, as you likely remember, a lot of work on tree pits over the years, so definitely something that we might need to take back up. Anybody else like to speak for 2 minutes before we close out the open session? Going once, going twice. All right. We are going to move on to our second scheduled item, which is a presentation from the team at DYCD. Whenever y'all are ready, you can go ahead. We typically do presentation, then questions from board members, and then open it up to questions from the public, if there are any.
Okay, Alex, are you on? Do you want to start? Okay. Hi, good evening. My name is Ron Zan, Associate Commissioner here at DYCD's Community Development Division, and thank you very much for interest in DYCD's ESOL programs, and also our services right now at the city's Humanitarian Emergency Response and Relief Centers, known as HERCs. Just wanted to give you a little bit background of DYCD's adult literacy program. So for the last at least 30 years, DYCD has been funding and supporting adult literacy programs through community-based organizations throughout the city. The adult literacy programs include, adult basic education, as a basic reading, writing, and numeracy. And also we have classes that prepares people for the, very well-known GED testing, right? So, and then we also have what we call a ESOL program. So those are the English language instruction program for recent immigrants. Annually we serve anywhere between 10,000 to 15,000 participants in the programs operated by community-based organizations. Since last fall, we've been working with the Mayor's Office of Immigrant Affairs to basically connect adult literacy programs to the city's resource navigation centers, where the newly arrived asylum seekers to settle down in New York City. So we've been working with them. We have connected our providers to those centers to basically open our classes to individuals who can and have the time to sign on to the classes in our programs. In addition to that, recently we've got a request from Health and Hospitals, who actually operates the city's HERC centers. When they first came to us, there were 5 HERC centers. So we talked about how we can bring much needed English classes to the centers. So very quickly, that was back in the beginning of March, and very quickly we got the go ahead and to bring classes over there. We have identified 5 English language programs that are planning to have classes at the 5 HERC centers. One of them is in Queens, is Wingate. That's the name of the hotel. So they're all in the, those recently converted, hotels that converted to those shelters. So one of them is in Wingate, in Queens, and then the other 4 that we are in are all in Manhattan, right? So many of you probably are familiar with those names, the hotel names: Walcott, Watson, Stewart, and then Holiday Inn downtown here in Manhattan. So we have, visited and toured the places. We, get to know a little bit about the residents in those places and the space for classrooms. And last week, our providers and the HERC staff, we had a joint meeting. We called it sort of like a orientation session where we introduced, talked about our programs, and they talked about what it's like to work and interact with the residents at the place at the HERC centers. So this past week, the CBOs, the community-based organizations, their staff, and the HERC center staff have been, meeting and planning class sessions and schedules, and enrolling students into the classrooms. So I haven't got the latest update from each site yet, but I've been copied on those, those meeting emails. Looks like the earliest to start the classes is going to be next week, because of the holidays. So some programs are closed, but they're gonna, I think the first gonna start next weekend, and then the others will follow. That's basically where we are right now. This is very recent to actually have classes at those centers. We have just started planning on these, and we are going in there to provide classes. And I welcome any questions.
Thank you, sir. We'll take them in the order that we see them, and after the board members have had a chance to ask, we'll see if anyone from the public has a question. So Matt had his hand up first, then we'll go to Katie and then Josephine.
Thanks, Kit. Thanks very much for the information. It's good to hear that you'll be starting classes at the Watson. I was wondering if you know which CBO would be working out of that location yet, and then
yes.
Okay.
Yes, I actually do know. I'll just, for a minute. I have. Let's see. All right, at Watson, it's Riseboro.
Riseboro?
Yeah.
Okay.
Riseboro going to Watson. Yep.
Okay. And as far as the funding for this, are you using existing funding, or is this funding that you are anticipating will be continued into the next fiscal year? I'm just curious as to how this program is being supported.
That's a good question. Actually, we got the request, and then, our agency, our fiscal went to OMB, and we got the, green light to start the services. Right now, this is for this fiscal year only. Whether we're going to be able to continue or not, that's a question actually on everybody's mind. So I'm sure as we provide the services, this will be, funding will be, explored, and so we hope they will continue, but I don't have an answer right now.
Thank you.
I think Matt's done. If you want to take over, Katie.
Thanks. So I have a couple questions. Thank you so much for this presentation. It's super helpful to hear. and reassuring to us, because we are, as a committee, people who sort of asked back in, I guess, February, if this was possible, right, to have on-site services. So we're delighted to hear that that's happening. So a couple of quick questions. First of all, how has the need or the demand for these services been assessed? For example, like, was a survey done at each of the sites, like how many people want to do this? And do you have a sense of how many people are going to be offered these literacy classes at the Watson? And is it being provided to everybody who wanted it? Or is it sort of just like on a smaller basis at the moment? So that's my first question.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good question. So it's actually yes, health and hospitals, they are the operators of this, they operate all those centers, right? So they came to us to ask us whether we can start a program there. So the other ones that actually told us that there is, certainly a need for language classes. So before we started this, and of course we, let them know that we have literacy programs throughout the city, where they can, people, all our programs are aware and of the population that might come to their programs, and they are also connected to those resource navigation centers. So they came to us and we asked, to start a pilot program at 5 HERC centers. So that's what they told us. So we actually toured the space and everything, so we got let me see, we got about $200,000, right, to begin its pilot program at each site. We're looking at enrolling 100 people into the classes at each of the site. So we're talking about 500 people between now and June. That's gonna, that's a lot for this brief period of time to get started. And I'm pretty sure, given, population, we know that, a lot of people will need English language classes, but how many people are indeed available to take classes? At this point, I'm not very clear. So that's why, because they're the ones that are now helping our providers identifying people who are interested, who can commit to a certain number of hours of instruction a week, so that you'll be able to actually, see the learning take place, right? So we understand that when they first come here, the first and foremost issue is to be able to settle down, getting the kids to school, finding jobs, and get your legal status taken care of and all that. And we understand that. And our programs going in there, knowing that we have to be flexible. Our programs go, all the 5 programs, they all have have the staff ready, have the schedules planned, but they know that they have to talk with the staff at the centers to actually, let them see this is what we have, and so who are the people you're identifying, and how many of them? How do we, get them into the classes? So this is something that's going on right now. There needs to be some assessment because, as you all know, you cannot put people of, English language proficiency levels, very different, right? So you have people of similar proficiency levels would be grouped into one class, and then, that's basically, best practices. You don't want to have someone who's already able to, speak, fluently versus people who are just starting to learn alphabets or learn, simple survival English for directions and all that. So there is going to be a new assessment.
Thank you. And then the other 2 questions were whether or not childcare is going to be provided so that the parents of young kids who want to take these ESL classes, that they will be available to do so without worrying about childcare.
Okay.
And then just the last question is, I know that at non-HERCs, so at non-HHS sites, where there are, shelters for asylum-seeking families, that there's a lot of demand too. It's one of the things we hear about the most is that people really want to learn English. And I've heard that at least at one of those sites that they have somebody, I think from the DOE's adult ed literacy program teaching. And I just wondered, it sounds like your division hasn't had anything to do in the past with offering on-site at the shelters. And is that something that you could imagine you might be able to expand to, or is that just something outside your purview?
First of all, I think I wish, we could have staff from, a health and hospital to be here too. They are the ones that are most familiar with services that are there. I toured the places and I know that they have, comprehensive support services provided to the residents over there. Looks like they have a medical, they have food, they have case management. That's what they told me. I remember when we were talking about ESL classes, one question did come up, as you just asked. How about if a parent, comes to the class with a child, right? So, basically, we basically said, listen, it's all up to the teacher. If you bring your kid over there and other people, don't feel, disrupted and the kids are quiet there, that's fine. As long as the adults can learn, there's no issue. I told them that, I taught classes before. I know some students come to me and say, oh, I have my kid with me. Can I sit there? Of course, you can sit there quiet and do your own thing. There's no problem. So this did come up. I don't really know whether they actually provide childcare. That part, I have no idea.
And then just lastly about whether or not this might be provided to non-HERCs.
That's a good question. I really don't know, because what we have been coordinating with mayors of immigrant affairs, so they are the ones that actually do the overall coordination, and we, when they have a need, for example, they actually came to us to say, hey, we need your programs, information, your address, your contact, at those, close to all the sites where asylum seekers, cases are being processed or case management provided. And that's what we did. And we gave it to them the information, and we informed all our providers about, the possibility of accepting the residents from the different shelters in the boroughs. But it's really a balance. Right now, our programs, they are funded to serve a certain number of people and to enroll a certain number of people, and they have a contractual obligations to do. And where they can, there is open room, open space. They certainly get people into the existing program. I know a lot of programs are already doing that. As the need grows for the language services, I'm pretty sure we'll get that request, and we will respond accordingly. I also want to let you know that we actually recently we have had meetings sort of like coordinating this with the Department of Education's adult education programs. I understand that they are also providing classes at locations closer to the HERC centers or other sites. And also we're going to compare our schedules at each sites. So to see if we have classes on certain days and other days we don't. And if there is need, so they can do classes over this, kind of fill the gaps. So we want to make sure that we can also all maximize, the space to provide classes. So those are hotels, as you know, they're not your traditional classroom settings. So the space is limited, but we're trying to maximize, what we can use over there.
Thank
Lucy?
you. Thank you for this great, all this great information. This is all fantastic news. I just want to circle back to Matt's question earlier. So the $200,000, like, how far is that going to get you or get this program? So if you have 100 people in each shelter who are in the program, will they be able to get a GED at the end of the program, or like, what is this for a couple of months to the end of the year? How does this work?
Well, that's see, right now, as we understand it, right? So those are very recent immigrants whose English levels are proficiency levels are at what we call a low level. So we're looking at starting level survival English. So as we, provide those classes, and as we complete our assessment, and we will know the population a little better, if there is a need to actually bring in, as you just said, the GED classes and all that. GED, as you know, is for, 12, those who have completed the 12th, close to 12th grade, right? So you need to sit in for a test that, that includes reading, writing, math, at the level of 12th grade. So we don't know at this point, and so we just went in there and we're doing assessment. My understanding is this is the ESOL. But when in our traditional literacy programs, those people who who moved from lower level to mid level to higher level ESL, and the next step is some people is to move to a GED program, or even some of those who came from other countries that already have a high school diploma. All they need is a quick review of the English, and then they move on to colleges. So
Okay.
yeah.
Thank you. So then after a person completes the ESOL class, like, how much will they know and how long will that take? About approximately, like, is there a set number of weeks for every class?
You're talking in general or at the centers?
Yeah, in general.
In general. Well, that's a very good question. Actually, it's it depends on how intense the class, the class is designed, right? How long the class is offered, how often a person actually sits in the classroom. So our basic idea is that when we design a class, and the class must have a certain intensity and duration, the length of time, in order to make sure that you get adequate services, and people can actually move, can actually advance in terms of their ability to speak and read and write in English. So for example, our adult literacy programs, our expectation is you design class that it will have at least on a weekly basis, you should have 6 hours of instruction, and a class should last long enough to offer, like somewhere between 70 to 100 instructional hours before students can be assessed for progress. They come in, they take a pre-test. We use a standardized English language tests. They all take a test to establish the baseline. We call it a pre-test. Then we give them instruction. That we know that from experience, you can't really advance from one level to another, until you have received, a certain amount of instruction hours. So our expectation is our class is around 70 to 100 hours. Then we assess students again, and to see if students, can make a what we call a level gain. That's from one. We have our class is designed such that there are 6 levels for ESL. So it'd be very beginning to the middle and advanced. So it really varies. We have programs that will say to us that we have, depending on the population, some programs they have students that are there, they can attend much more intensive classes than we recommend to them. For example, we have programs that say, okay, we can do 25 hours a week. All right, it's basically every day we can do a few hours of classes, and that's very intensive. And then that class can you can do a month or 2 months, and all of a sudden people have very intensive instruction, and they're immersed into this English language environment, and you can see progress very quickly. And I actually always favor the intensive classes, but given that this is adult education, adults have lots of responsibilities, their work, the families and all that. You really can't require that all classes have 20 hours a week. So that's why we say, well, a minimum 6 hours. We want to have a balance. You have people have a life to live, but also if you want to take classes, then you should have some certain amount of exposure to the language. So we kind of balance that. And if a program has a special request, for example, some say, well, 6 hours is actually too long for our certain population. And I have had programs that came to us say, oh, we really can't do 6 hours. We have a group of people who work in restaurants. They are only available on Saturdays. So then we take a look at that and we help them design a program that offers, 4 to 5 hours just on that day, right? So then you have a long, day to do, how you vary your activities to make sure that these 4 or 5 hours a day class is, engaging enough. But, it all depends on participants' needs.
Sabrina, and then Alan, and then we have one person in the public, Hassan R. Jesse, could you bring Hassan over when Alan has begun, please?
Thank you. I actually have a comment and a question. I myself am a product of English as a second language. I took it in college and before college, and it worked really great for me. So it's a wonderful program to learn English. Well, a way of teaching English. That said, you talked about this program is funded on the current fiscal year, so that means it ends on June 29, or did I just
that's how we do business here, right? We get funding and we support programs on a fiscal year basis.
Yeah, I work for MB, so that's why I'm asking actually,
okay.
Just because I didn't know you said out years, you said in 23 or 24, or so the funding ends on June 29.
Currently, what we
okay.
have, the $200,000 I just mentioned is just for actually, for the last quarter of this year, because we
don't know what's going to happen with 24.
I don't know at this point.
Okay.
Yeah, we're just starting this right now.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Thank you for that very informative presentation. Quick question, are your reports and assessments, are they available online on your website? Are your assessments, your reports on the program, on the various, are they available online? When you do your assessments and reports on your various programs?
Let me think about this. So we have a database where programs enter the data into it. I believe that the mayor's management report is public document. That's where we report on a quarterly basis and annually, all our program numbers, enrollment outcomes. I believe that's
okay.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Thank you again.
Sure.
I'm bringing over Hassan now. But I just wanted to, while he comes over, I just wanted to bring up two things. So the reason Ron is here, and he's amazing, is because I reached out to Laura Atlas, who is the representative from Health and Hospitals Corporation. And so any questions I think we have for additional services that are supplementary to what DYCD is doing, or in general, we can certainly follow up with Laura and she can answer those questions. Katie knows, she's been on the housing committee. A couple of the rest of you are on the housing committee as well. So you know that they recently came in front of us for the Watson Hotel, which switched from a single adult to families with children. And then the other thing I was just going to say, wrong was right. I think the mayor's management report is probably the best place for that information, Alan. That's where we usually get it. So every agency has to do it, by the way. So it's actually a pretty helpful document in general. Hassan did not accept coming over. So I don't know if he's present. Oh, there he is. Now he's coming. Great. Hassan, you just need to come off mute and you can ask your question.
Sorry about that. On that time. I raised my hand before this topic came up, but I think it was like literally the last second before it got transferred over to the ESL topic. I actually had an open discussion question. So should I table this to the end of the meeting now at this point?
I defer to Kit and Alan on that one.
Let's hold for now, just to make sure that we can close out this topic. And maybe we can get you in quickly in between this topic and the next one, because usually what we do is we give the committee a chance to discuss and consider whether a letter or anything else should be taken up as a next step. So apologies if I did cut you off, and we will get you in. All right. Mr. Zhang, I'm actually seeing you double at the moment. I don't know if that's
I think that's Alex Banker, my colleague, who.
Yes.
Yeah, I shared the link with him.
Thank you very much, Ron.
Sure.
Well, thank you for joining us. Want to echo what several of the board members said, which was really appreciate all of this information. And excited that this program is getting off the ground. I think it's direly needed, and hopefully many folks will benefit from it. You all are welcome to stay on for the discussion. I don't know how long or short that will be, and for the other items, but we're going to shift gears now. Folks on the committee, is there anyone who'd like to make a motion for a letter or any other commentary before we close out this agenda item and move on to the next?
Can I ask a question before I think about a motion? I can't think of an example, but maybe we've had plenty. But could there be a letter that basically says, we've heard about this pilot program for the last quarter, and we very much hope, we think it's desperately needed. We very much hope it will be expanded, that not only will it be funded for next fiscal year, but it will be expanded or something like that? Like, can we talk about the specific finances of it, or would that not be right to include in a letter?
I'll defer to Jesse, but I was sort of hoping we might do something along those lines, whether it's saying that we hope this creeps into the budget for next year or gets considered by our local electeds for their discretionary funds, or some third or fourth or fifth channel. It seems like the end of June is not a whole lot of runway for this program to have the impact it's capable of. Jesse?
Yeah, that's completely fine. That's what we do. So we certainly can get some specific numbers from Ron and from Alexander, hopefully, and advocate for FY24 and going forward. That's fine.
Okay, well then I would like to move, if possible, that we write a letter thanking for this presentation, and that we think it's so that this topic or this funding is really important, that we want it not only re-upped in 2024, but expanded if possible. And I think, Kit, you said it much better than I can, but through whatever means possible. And Leslie, maybe through your budget stuff that there's a better way of saying this, but anyway, something to that effect.
Leslie, anything you want to add in your capacity as our budget czar?
No, it just depends on the letter, I guess. And then, as you know, anything that we talk about can be added. If you guys, if the committee sees it as a priority.
Would it be all right if I made a question or suggestion, Kit? I'm not a member, but I think I forget which one of the members here asked about it. Maybe it was Katie and maybe Josephine as well. I think this is specifically for HERC sites, this program currently, and I think we recognize that we certainly have 2 or 3 DHS sites already in our district that are for asylum and seekers, and we don't necessarily know 100% whether they have somebody or not. Maybe Josephine does. She seems to know a lot. Maybe Katie does too, but I certainly don't. And so I think if we wanted, I think it would be beneficial to say that a program like this could be expanded beyond HERC sites to the temporary hotel sites that DSS and DHS are manning, just because those are popping up much more frequently than the HERCs come with a lot of planning and a lot of weight, and these temporary sites just pop up. And
Jesse, I think that's great, and that is my hope that you're right, but we should be specific in the letter. So I hereby revise my motion to say not only that this programming that's already been started, which is great, should be included in 2024, but we believe it should be expanded to allow for this kind of literacy and ESL training at the temporary hotels as well.
If you're open to it, maybe including some language around the really good point you made about also just assessing the overall demand.
Okay.
I think it connects really nicely to what has just been summarized as something that we'll add. But I think, it's not just continue the funding beyond June, it's hopefully expand it to other sites that would benefit and explore ways to better understand the level of need or the demand or the number of folks who would participate if this program could be expanded. Because that feels like a important step for the city to take.
Great.
Jesse, I just had one question. This is Alex Betancourt from DYCD.
Hi,
Alex.
Yes, I just wanted to know, have you already formalized your needs statement for the board in anticipation of the hearings that we go through annually with OMB? And is this identified as a priority?
So the answer is yes for the upcoming FY24. So we would be setting this letter in during that time period.
Okay.
Our statement of district needs and our budget requests for FY24 have already been submitted. Our cycle is in November of every year. So we'll be dealing with FY25 coming this year for statement of needs and district and budget.
Very good.
But
Thank you.
Will still get in during the the FY24 period, the letter at least.
Right. Okay. That way it goes on the record.
Yep.
Okay. Thank you very much. And I wanted to thank Commissioner Zhang for his presentation as well. And all of the board members of CB4.
Right. I just want to echo that too. I want to thank all of you for your interest and support. And thank you for having me at your meeting.
We profoundly appreciate that, but it is a tiny bit mature because we actually still need to vote. So let's do that. And then I think we can close out this topic. All in favor of the letter that Katie motioned and then updated a couple of times, basically saying, thank you, please fund this for longer. Please see if you can expand it and please understand how much it is needed. Anyone opposed? Anyone present not eligible?
Me.
Noted.
Any abstentions? All right, one last thank you to the team from DYCD. Hassan, if you are still on the line, we'll give you 2 minutes before we transition to the team from New York Public Library. The 2 minutes will start whenever you begin speaking.
Thank you very much. First, I want to say thank you to everyone on the board. I know it's not an easy job and you don't get enough thanks, so I do appreciate all the work everyone does. I grew up here. I'm born and raised in Manhattan in this neighborhood on West 22nd Street between 7th and 8th. So that's about 41 years so far. And I have a concern because I spoke to the Department of Transportation and they aren't giving me any details about the topic coming to the block, which is open streets. My concern is when I talk to them and I express concerns, everything is kind of brushed aside. It's like, oh, homeless problem in the summertime, that's not our problem. Oh, the open streets and potential litter, oh, we have someone for that, that's not our problem. Then the next topic I try to get out of them was, well, what about, security? Like what if there's rowdy people or, homeless people that want to just hang out and maybe do some drugs, and which happens now without open streets. So as I speak to the Department of Traffic, I keep getting the delay. We're going to let you know what the plan is. We're going to let you know what the proposal is. It's really unique. It's really special. Everyone should love it. I'm like, well, what if you don't love it? And I'm just not sure, if consensus was really done on the block, because as I talk to my neighbors about it, everyone's kind of dumbfounded by the process, and not everyone seems to be on board with having just an open street with no parking, which is also a problem for certain people who have cars. And this kind of assumption that it's all perfect. There's no collateral damage that gets created from having this type of environment available. For example, we have 4 or 5 weed shops within one block of this street. When you have chairs and weed distribution, you have smoking occurring for sure on this block now without open streets. So there's a lot of parts to this equation which I can't seem to get answers from. So I was hoping to find some dialogue with the board on how this process gets vetted. There's also a rat problem on this block. At every night at 8 o'clock, 7 o'clock, 9 o'clock, there's rats running around looking for food. If you have people sitting down eating all day, that just sounds like more rats coming to the neighborhood and to this block specifically. Plus the fact there's large construction projects 2 blocks away from us that have really kicked out the underground more than it did in the last 15 years. So I'm just trying to find someone who can give me some, game plan or the ability to have people vote for what they want or don't want. If that vote already happened, maybe it's just too late. I'm just not sure, how this process plays out, I guess is probably the best way to put it.
Yeah, thank you for sharing. And our district manager, Jesse, is probably the best starting point.
Yeah. Hi, Hassan. Thank you for reaching out. Yeah, let's. I have your email because you registered here through the Zoom. I can certainly follow up with you and give you a background. So this was mostly that specific program and that specific street was mostly run through our transportation planning committee, not the ACES committee. So that would be the right venue in terms of to talk to folks about it. I can certainly forward you the letters that we have done on it. And obviously this was a number of folks came out to talk about this specific area for open streets, both in favor and having opposition to it or concerns about it. So I can certainly talk to you offline and point you in a better direction for sure.
Okay, great.
Great. My email is on the on the CB4 website as well, so you can just easily find me there.
All right, great. If anything, if I don't get your email, I'll just hit you up on email then, just to point me to the right group of people, I guess, who would give me some insight.
Yep.
And just one more question. Do you know a date or, is there even dates so far? I guess I really get nothing from DOT besides we have a proposal.
When DOT is coming back with their proposal, you mean their design?
Yeah, design, implementation.
I don't know the date off the top of my head. We certainly can find. We certainly can try follow up with DOT to find out. But we can certainly do that.
No problem. All right, I'll reach out to you then. That's not a problem. Thank you, Jesse.
No problem.
All right,
take care,
thank you
everyone.
for
Have a
joining
nice
us,
night.
sir. And We're going to move on to the team from New York Public Library. Thank you for your patience and thank you for coming back. You all can follow the typical protocol, presentation, and then questions.
Hello, everyone, and happy Monday evening. I'm Dr. Brandy McNeil, and I am here to talk to you about NYPL. And I'm going to talk briefly about some of the HERCS work that was just spoken about, just so that you all know what we're doing in that space, and then I'll jump into my presentation. So we are also participating in helping the asylum seekers who have come, and we will be at 3 of the HERCS locations. We'll be at the Row, the Watson, and the Stewart. We're going to do a number of things in a number of phases. And so we will be doing tabling and library card signups so that they're able to attend and get access to our wonderful resources. We will also be offering story time programs led by our children's team. And one of the things that we are ensuring is that as we're thinking about this whole entire process, that we have enough translation services, because we have gone and done the visits to the shelters as well. And we've spoken to a lot of the organizing folks, so Moya, and we understand what the needs are. We will also be doing our English language learning support as well through our ESOL programming. And we'll be doing some Mango help for them as well. That will be provided because the information that we got told is that a lot of people are coming and going, and so they might not really be ready for a 12-week type of program to be able to make that commitment. And so we will be providing some other resources so that they don't have to just come to our formal and informal programming. We are also providing some teen services so that they can get their teens involved in a lot of our resources, such as anti-prom and some other things. We'll have a small book nook collection, say that 3 times, that will be available to the asylum seekers in the hotels. And so we're excited about that. And that's really the stuff that we're going to be doing as part of our first phase. There will be a second phase that will also include just kind of summer at the library for them, as well as our fall phase, which will be our 3rd phase. We're also involving our bookmobiles as well in the Staten Island area. And so, we're really going to be there to help and support the asylum seekers at these hotels. So I just wanted to let you know that before I jumped into my presentation. So I am going to go ahead and share my screen. Give me 1 second to see if this is going to work. Okay, if you can let me know if you actually see my screen. Perfect, thank you. All right, so let's jump right in. So what we do at NYPL in terms of adult services is we're really striving to provide access, equity, and knowledge. Those are our main things. And we do that in a number of ways, but the whole goal is to really help and target our underserved and underrepresented communities. And we do that in a number of ways through culture of innovation, as well as lifelong learning. And the goal for us is really to remove barriers to education, as well as employment and entrepreneurship. And so how do we do that? So with our adult English language and literacy, we actually do that by providing informal classes where our patrons can come into the library. They can speak and have conversational classes if you know some English, so that way you can improve your English. We also have formal classes that are 12-week programs that we do every semester, every cycle for every season. And those are located throughout our areas. In addition to that, we also have some of our literacy classes to help people who need to gain literacy and possibly get their GED. We also have citizenship classes as well. And so those are really popular at our branches. And we work with a variety of organizations in order to achieve these goals. So that's what we do in the area of our adult English language and literacy area. In addition to that, we also have our Tech Connect program. Our Tech Connect program is centered around digital literacy. And we have done a number of amazing things here. A good example would be, we have now launched, and I'm really excited about this, our Take Charge with My Chart classes. We have partnered with Mount Sinai hospitals as well as Montefiore hospitals in order to provide these classes. They are classes that help people to learn how to use the MyChart system. They learn how to schedule appointments. They learn how to go in and read their information from results. They can do prescriptions and send letters to their doctors. So we teach them step by step what to do in this particular program. And we are launching that in several libraries throughout our locations as well. So we're really excited about that. We have also been providing Procreate classes to help with digital literacy in the area of digital art, and that was funded by ARPA. We also have our very own studio at our Stavros Niarchos Foundation Library, which is on 40th and 5th. And that has truly allowed New Yorkers to be able to come and get access to what's typically not available to them if they didn't have funding. And so they have come in, and we just recently did an in-progress showcase, and we were happy to see that we had a variety of very diverse group of people who have done tons of work. They've come and they've learned with us because we offer classes, and then they've also come in and used their skills to then perform or showcase what they've done. So people can come to us and learn how to do podcasts. They can also learn how to do sound effects. They can learn how to do music and audio production, as well as photography. And so the patrons that we've had come to these programs has been amazing. We have had 2 homeless people who have come in and created, one has created a podcast, another's created his own music, and he's really excited about that. We've had a group of women who are sisters and a mom who have created a podcast because they speak Hoisin, which is a Chinese dialect, and has been wonderful to really see their podcast do so well. And that's just a couple of examples of what we've seen so far with some of the patrons and the work that has been coming out of that. We also have partnerships with Apple. And through that Apple partnership, we are providing people with the opportunity to not only get certified as a specialist, but to be able to learn how to create apps for iOS. So that is what we are doing with Apple. We have also launched our first tech fair, and we'll be doing more. And that gave people the opportunity to hear from industry professionals. And that was Apple, Microsoft, Google, Verizon, the list goes on and on. And we did workshops during that time, as well as provided job opportunities through employers and recruiters who were there. And so it was really a great day for people to be able to just understand the opportunities that there are in New York in terms of tech. In addition to that, we also host tech talks, and we do that throughout the year. And people are once again able to be informed about what's happening in tech. So that's our Tech Connect program, and that's the goal of that. Next up is our Career Services Department. And through our Career Services Department, we provide one-on-one career coaching, where they sit one-on-one with an actual career coach, and they map out what their plan is, what their goals are, and then we help to assist them through that goal. We also provide resilience coaching. We do interview assistance. We do job search assistance. We also provide access to BrainFuse Job Now, which provides kind of on-demand service for help with a resume, or it could be an interview. And that's a really great service that we provide. All you need is your library card. And then we will be launching our very first virtual interview room, where those who don't have access to a space in order to conduct a virtual interview will be able to book a space at the New York Public Library and come in and conduct their interview. So that's what we do at our Career Services Department. Within the last department, which is our Adults, Culture, and Creative Department, we are really striving to make sure that we provide a lot of our culture and creativity programs through this department. And so what do? We provide adult talks, author talks, book discussions. We provide a lot of our creative aging programming, heritage programs. We do the World Literature Festival, which was widely attended last year. We do things like dance parties. We provide the tax help that we provide for free through our services, and a host of other things. Upcoming this summer, some of the things we have outside of our outdoor reading that we do every year will be our Studio 40 Showcase on June 15th. We will be working on, and we are very excited about, our FCC Affordable Connectivity Outreach Program because we are already providing classes to help people enroll in the Affordable Connectivity Program. So this is an outreach kind of partnership so that we can help to really get the word out and assist people. And then we will be having our Manhattan Job Fair at the Stavros Niarchos Foundation Library on May 6th, and that's upcoming as well. So that is my presentation, and I'm open to any questions you might have. And there's my info if anybody needs to reach out to me.
Thanks, Dr. McNeil. We'll start with folks on the committee and then open it up to folks who are attending from the public. Any questions for the New York Public Library team? Katie, go ahead.
Hi, that was a great presentation. Thank you so much. And just real quickly, you probably heard part of our discussion earlier with Commissioner Zhang, but you mentioned some of the outreach you're doing to the HERC sites at the Roe and the Watson and things. I was just wondering if you have been able to do much outreach or what you're offering to the non-HERC but temporary hotels where there are asylum seekers?
So we're not providing services to the temporary hotels, and that's due to our research. What we find is that the people who are in the temporary location, they've got a couple of things that they're worried about, and that's really making sure that they have food, a roof over their head, and they're looking for employment. And when we go to provide services at those locations, because it's not a consistent way of servicing people, it's really hard to really capture them and get consistent attendance and everything that would be needed for that to be successful. So for us, the way that we're doing it now, the program that we have, because they're able to provide us with people who are there, who are going to be there for a while, and it is consistent in terms of having, so what we will be doing is providing our services weekly. And so that for us right now is something that we think will work.
Great. And just to, so that I better understand, is your experience about the sort of inconsistency or something of the temporary hotels, is that based on experience before the asylum seekers were staying at the temporary hotels, or is that after there were temporary hotels with asylum seekers?
It's after.
Okay.
It's after. I couldn't tell you before.
Okay. Thank you.
Laura?
Sorry about that. Thank you so much, Dr. McNeil, for a beautiful presentation. It was great. I just wanted to make sure that I understood completely what you were saying about the HERC sites and the tabling. So at the HERC sites, you're not partnering, but you are tabling, and that is to offer your longer courses, your 12-week courses to families there, and whatever other services you might have. Is that correct?
No, so we will not be providing our 12-week program there. And the reason why we won't be providing that 12-week program there is based on some of the survey results that we've gotten and that we've done to see just kind of what's going on. And so we will be providing kind of the beginner level because they truly are just learning how to speak. English. And because there are essentially 3 languages that we're focusing on that we've noticed are the main languages, we're trying to focus on getting classes for them within kind of that range. And so we're doing it in a number of ways, but one of those ways is by helping to use Mango and working with them through that so that they can at least start to get some of those beginner basics with it, with learning English.
Great. Thank you.
But we do provide them all the info for our 12-week and informal programs.
So you provided there when you're tabling, correct?
100%, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Tamara and then Josephine.
Hi, I just wanted, Dr. McNeil, thank you so much. What a comprehensive, I'm always amazed. I think libraries are some of the best institutions that we have, and the amount of, I think you guys are the #1 provider of probably adult learning in the city. So thank you. And something that we always try to ask of presenters is how can we be helpful? You know, we're part of the city's budget process. And so anything that you would need or your team, and I think even today, it's clear that you provide consistent services for our communities, but also that you're meeting needs now, which I think is so critical. So just wanted to give you space if there were some specific action items that you would need us to do or for us to think about. We just wanted to give you some space to share that.
I would say right now, hearing that there's going to be an additional cut to our funding has really hit us hard. This means that there's a potential for our services to be cut, our hours to be shortened, our days to be shortened. A lot of the services that we provide, we will need to cut back on. And that is pretty scary because we've been able to do some really creative and wonderful, innovative work to bring these new programs to patrons. And without that funding, it really jeopardizes everything. So I would say definitely writing letters and doing what you can to really help us continue to get consistent funding, because, you know, we're doing all this right now. Like even the work we're doing with Hercs, it was us saying, we need to step up, we need to do this, not them coming to us necessarily and saying, oh, hey, like, can you do this? We had already seen that, okay, wait a minute, people are coming, what can we do? And we were on the ball. It just so happened that we were able to kind of work with them and get everything up and running. But I think right now, losing that funding is really going to hurt the libraries. Thank you.
That was also my question. Thank you so much for being here and all the work that you're doing. Thank you.
Any other questions for the team from New York Public Library? I'm not seeing any raised hands from the public. So let's close out this piece of this agenda item. Want to join the thank yous that have already been shared and say really appreciated the thorough and very compelling presentation, and have always appreciated what New York Public Library does for the city. Definitely one of the institutions that the city cherishes and arguably should cherish more than we do. Before we move on to the next agenda item, I'm not sure who that is, but if whoever it is wouldn't mind not screen sharing right now, thank you. Want to give folks on the committee a chance if there's anything that folks would like to discuss and or a motion that someone would like to make. Tamara, go ahead.
I would love if we can make a motion to sort of support the library in the midst of these budget cuts. That's going to impact hours of services and days of services. Is that good enough? Do I need to make it more eloquent than that?
I think when we actually put it into Microsoft Word, we'll probably need to get a level more detailed, but I think the gist is exactly right. Does anyone want to add anything to that or any questions for Tamara? So just to make sure that I'm understanding correctly, I think it's a letter saying, one, thank you for coming and for sharing the valuable information that the New York Public Library team did just now, but also saying that we hope that the city can find a way to fund them in a way that does not cut into their services, offerings, staffing, et cetera, due to everything they do, but also in this moment, the work they're doing, addressing the influx of folks who are asylum seekers and new to the country that are benefiting from their services. Does that sound right to folks? All right. All those in favor? Anyone opposed? Mercedes, is that just a hand that has not yet come down?
Yes, that's it. I meant to bring it down, but I'm having issues.
We've all had that Zoom moment. Any present not eligible?
Me.
Any abstentions? All right. Thank you one last time to the New York Public Library team. And Tamara, am I getting ahead of myself by imagining that maybe you might be willing to write that letter?
I'll write it. I was taking some notes there, and yeah, I'll write it and send it to Jesse and you.
Very, very much appreciate it. All right, we're going to move on to our next presentation, which I believe is from Preventative Education. I'm going to butcher this acronym because I don't have it in front of me, but I apologize if I'm mispronouncing your name, Dr. Laskowski. If you want to take over, presentation and then questions.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you, everybody, for having me and for taking the time. Just give me a moment as I share my screen and my slides. Let's see here. Okay. If someone just could give me, I'm gonna just if someone could just give me a thumbs up if they can see the slides that I have here, great. My name is Larissa Laskowski. I'm an emergency room physician and a medical toxicologist. I work at NYU Grossman School of Medicine, Bellevue Hospital, and I'm a consultant for the New York City Poison Control Center. And I have spoken here before, so it's possible that perhaps one of you would remember a talk that I gave about teen vaping. What I'm here today to do is talk a little bit about fentanyl and how it relates to our young people and schools. Just to tell you a little bit more about the Prevention Education Partnership, which is an initiative that my colleagues and I started back in 2016. In the emergency department, we see a lot of bad cases and preventable illness and preventable injury. And so our goal with this program is to work to prevent the cases from coming into the emergency room, and namely to help keep young people safe, healthy, and again, out of the emergency room. So the reason why I was invited to speak today was to talk a little bit about fentanyl, which I think that many of you have heard or read a lot about in the past year or few years, and perhaps have different degrees of understanding of this drug. And so I'm going to go into a little more depth about it and why it's relevant to understand for our community, and again, really for our schools. So I think that a really great example of why this is so important and what's changing is a case of a young person, 13 years old. It was a 13-year-old boy in Connecticut that, last year collapsed in gym class, was found by the school nurse without a pulse. An ambulance was called, the child was brought to the hospital, and unfortunately 2 days later was pronounced dead. And what some of you may remember this case, as it was reported in the news media, but police immediately started an investigation. They found 40 bags of fentanyl in this child's locker, and they found 100 bags of fentanyl in his bedroom. I think that some of the backstory is that his uncle may have been dealing drugs. The child thought he was using cocaine. Seems like a pretty shocking story. What's unfortunate is that more and more of these cases are being reported in the news media across the country. Some of you may remember a cluster of teenagers in LA County, and just again, all over the country. And what has been determined is that teenagers are at increased risk. In fact, a study was done and found that, in a 3-year period, 2019, 2021, teen fentanyl overdose deaths tripled and, ultimately rising exponentially. And some of you may have any, some ideas or thoughts about why that may be happening. To just put it really clearly in numbers, I think that these statistics really help to frame what's happening. So fentanyl is not new. It's been mixed into the heroin supply for a while now. But between the years of 2018 to 2021, the number of counterfeit pills that have illicit fentanyl in it have really just rocketed. So in 2018, maybe there was just over 290,000 pills that were seized, and speed up to 2021, and it's over 9.5 million. And in 2022, we've already far exceeded that number. And in addition, it's not just, prescription painkillers, that have these counterfeit pills that have illicit fentanyl, but it's things like Xanax and Adderall, and certainly cocaine and methamphetamine. And so it's because of that reason, really, that teenagers are at a heightened risk. And so, what's even more interesting, actually, is that during the years of the pandemic, 2020 into 21, the actual rates of teen drug use went down. And some of that has to do with their, the pandemic and access, the lack of time that young people were spending with their friends. And that effect did carry over into 21. So it's interesting. I don't know how long it's going to last, but teen drug use going down, but overdose deaths rising exponentially. And that's where we're at right now. So, as I mentioned, in, these cases across the country serve as catalysts for school systems, right? To not let this happen again, to prepare the school system, to train their teachers and other school staff in naloxone use, and to equip the schools with naloxone. I think that our school system right now, we have not had a catalyst in New York City, thankfully. My fear is that one is going to occur. And so in the absence of a broad systematic response right now, what my colleagues, my emergency physician colleagues, pediatricians, what we're doing is we're doing trainings in school. So the Prevention Education Partnership is now an opioid overdose prevention program sponsored by New York State. So we're able to dispense naloxone, and we have a very, very specific training for school staff. And we also are starting to train, high school seniors in a very, very specific way that's addressing their needs. And, like I said, we're dispensing naloxone, and then we're teaching people what it is, how to use it. It's actually quite easy to use. The real key is understanding how it works and how and when you would give it, right? So when we're in training, we tell people, you give naloxone when you think you've identified an opioid overdose. Okay, well, I've never seen an opioid overdose, so how do I identify an opioid overdose? And the way that we teach people to do that, and some of you may have gone through training that's similar to, the one that I'm going to present, but basically someone's not responding to their name, to noise, you're yelling, trying to wake them up. They're not responding to pain. And so we teach people a very, very valuable skill, which you may not have learned in the past, but it's something called the sternal rug. You basically take your fist and this part of your knuckle you rub up and down along someone's sternum. So, some people may shake someone or feel like they should throw water on them, but in fact, this is the most effective way to stimulate someone who may be overdosed on alcohol or Xanax and or an opioid, to see if they may be responsive to that. And if they aren't, that means that they do have a potential significant overdose. And the last thing is to know if they have decreased or absent breathing, because fentanyl is an opioid. The reason why opioids are so deadly, unlike drugs like cocaine, marijuana, methamphetamine, is that they stop you from breathing an overdose. Okay, so that's like a telltale sign of an opioid overdose. So if you've identified any of those, or even if you're not sure, we say to give naloxone. And the steps that you need to take, if you've ever taken a training in CPR, you call for help, you call 911, right? You can use the sternal rub not only to evaluate someone to see if they might be overdosed, but actually, and we do this a lot in the emergency room, just to stimulate someone just enough so they take a deep breath, which might give them a little bit of time, might give them the oxygen they need, might help them blow off the carbon dioxide that's building up in their body. And oftentimes, people don't have naloxone, in their back pocket. And so this is going to, again, buy you some time and give you a very valuable skill to use in, the unexpected and certainly unwanted situation where you may be witnessing an overdose. To administer naloxone, to recheck because you can give a second dose, and to put someone on their side. And in fact, the New York Times just put out a really, really great short video on Instagram, and probably on other social media sites, may even be on their, I imagine, on their website, for how, again, to identify an overdose and how to respond with naloxone. So the other thing that we try to encourage people, and certainly we work with schools to overcome this barrier and this fear. New York State law is very clear on this issue. They basically say that any school is allowed to have naloxone on site. Any school is allowed to train their staff, and there are ways that they recommend doing that, one of which is to partner with an opioid overdose prevention program like ours. That every teacher that has gone through that training can think about naloxone administration like first aid, creating this bar that's even lower than, needing to be trained to give an EpiPen. It's really, first aid is at minimal. Everyone, we want to feel comfortable knowing that they can do that. Also, naloxone is safe. And if you have someone that you think may be overdosed with a very high risk of dying, you have this medication that is a life-saving medication that if they're not overdosed, it won't hurt them. So in terms of next steps, what I would say for those of you here in this Zoom room right now is really to kind of increase awareness about this problem. About the fact that fentanyl is in virtually all illegal drugs that are sold, with the exception of marijuana. I know that there have been some cases that have been reported in the news media. There have been a small handful of cases where marijuana is contaminated with fentanyl, perhaps because it came from a drug dealer that was, selling more than one substance. But typically marijuana is not going to be laced with fentanyl, so we don't want to create widespread fear and panic. But we really do need to speak to our teenagers, and we need to speak to schools because I speak to principals frequently, and this is not on everyone's radar. And I don't expect it to be. This is my, my work, and I think that my job and the job of my colleagues is to get the word out, because what we're seeing is a trend that's not going to go away. It's going to continue. I would encourage everyone, if you have a teenager in your home, if someone uses any drug illegally, to have naloxone handy, and then to encourage the schools that you are affiliated with to partner with a program like mine, to train the staff to have at least one naloxone kit, in the same place that the AED is, and to incorporate this into their, emergency response plans. So with that, I'll just open it up for any additional questions that anyone may have. I know that I've maybe created some concern, which I certainly want to do, while at the same time not trying to promote fear. This is just a fact. Fentanyl is incredibly lucrative for drug cartels, and it's going to be here, and the DEA is not going to be able to stop this, at least not in the near future. So we just need to be aware, and we need to just protect ourselves, our community, our young people. So thank you so much.
Thank you for the presentation. Questions first from the board, and then if there are any from the public. Alan, go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Laskowski. Terrific, very important topic, terrific presentation. How are you finding your way into the schools? How are you managing to make these presentations? And are you having any pushback at all? Or are you finding them mostly accommodating to having you come in?
Yeah, I think that, thank you for that question. We have over the years partnered with a number of schools, so we've offered our training to them. And many schools are, very interested. Some of them are, there's a lot of competing interests at the level of schools, for principals, for administrators, for superintendents. And, it's been my job to just make the case that this is something that, we should be putting on schools' radar. And so I think that some of the schools are like, oh, well, we have a teen vaping problem. We're dealing with that. Can you talk to our students about that? And so I try to reframe for them that this is a problem that is that we can just be prepared for, because we don't want, one child overdosing in a school is too many. I would say at the level of the Department of Education, I think that, again, lots of competing interests. I'm hopeful that they are aware, because we've, kind of announced to them that we are a resource for the school system and will continue to be, and would like to, participate in a broad, systematic approach to help, the largest school system in the country. I know that you guys are aware of that. We are available, and just hopeful that, there are more people at the highest level that can also appreciate the need. But I will also say that we started working with superintendents, which I think are at kind of at the mid to high level, and, are going to start a pilot with one of our superintendents that we partnered with before to prepare all the schools in his district. We'd like to do that for as many as we have the capacity for, and the more need that is expressed, the greater the opportunity is for us to go back to funders to say, we need the support, and perhaps even to city council members.
Thank you.
There aren't any other questions. I have a couple questions. You may not be able to answer this, or you may. Just ballpark, how much would it cost for every school in the city to have sort of one person trained and the supplies on site?
That's a great question. I don't have the exact number for. What I will say is that I think that, in the past, for example, pre-pandemic and even during the pandemic, we were giving talks directly to students, trying to reach every student. Obviously, we have very limited resource. We have a massive school system, and really just scratching the surface in terms of numbers. If the goal is to get just a naloxone kit into every school, I think it's extremely feasible. I'm willing to train every school nurse. And I think if we trained every school nurse, even if it's in a virtual format, that's going to have a pretty significant impact in terms of the number of schools that have naloxone and have at least one person that are trained. And I also think, as our strategy going from superintendent to superintendent, that if, again, we could be in a room with, groups of principals at a time, that we could have, that goal is not so pie in the sky, but is reachable. And right now, the naloxone that we get is free from the Department of Health. So that cost has been taken care of. In terms of our time and resources, I think I couldn't put a number on it. We don't charge schools right now. I hope never to have to charge the schools directly, but perhaps work through the Department of Education to get funding directly from them, or through, city council, funding to kind of support a larger effort to just get our doctors out and our medical students and our, training physicians out into the community. Sorry, that doesn't answer your question at all, except I think it's feasible.
Doesn't directly answer the question, but it provides an incredible amount of helpful information. I'm partly asking because I just read today that the initiative to lock doors, I believe at every elementary school in the city is moving forward, and it's going to cost about 80 million for something that there's really mixed evidence on. Does it make schools safer or less safe? This seems like something where the evidence base is actually clear. It would make schools more safe and protect against an issue where I think, unfortunately, it's a question of when, not if. This is a need, and so very helpful just to hear your point of view on what is the overall budget potentially for something like this.
Yeah, I don't think 80 million is what we need. I do know, and again, trying to I've been told that, my time is valuable, that our physicians' time is valuable. And if we put a price tag on our time in order to, have our doctors do this, it would be quite costly. But I also work with a group of people that are invested in taking their expertise and protecting, our community without being asked for compensation for that. So, I'm very optimistic. I mean, right now I know that we don't right now have the resources in order to cover every school in New York City. But I do think that there's an opportunity we have right now. And I would really hoping to capitalize on this time while there hasn't yet been a case, and I've just been shoring up the interest and the willingness on the part of community members and funders in order to support this effort.
Yeah. One more question. My understanding is there are certain, how do I want to put this? Certain narcotics are more or less used by certain groups of individuals, and it often maps to certain demographics. The city is very diverse, but there are some parts of it that are pretty concentrated with specific racial populations. Are these overdoses playing out more so in some committees with specific identifiable characteristics, or is this something that's being experienced across different backgrounds relatively equally?
Yeah, the demographics in terms of overdose deaths have really shifted, and 100% there are certain individuals and certain populations that are at higher risk. So, historically, people that use, opioids or other drugs, cocaine, et cetera, are going to be at higher risk. Certainly, the way that we used to think about it was if someone was, just got out of rehab or just got out of jail, or, they were at higher risk of overdosing. What has shifted, the opioid crisis has also dramatically evolved over the, past 20 years. So, as I'm sure that you are all very familiar with, we started with doctors like myself. I was, I remember being an intern, being trained to prescribe Percocet and, Vicodin for people that had back pain, knee pain, migraines, because we were taught and kind of, under the impression that we weren't going to cause any addiction. That was the belief. And we wanted to, didn't want people to suffer. So that problem that really stemmed from the pharmaceutical industry and OxyContin created a very specific group of people that became addicted to opioids, people that had access to healthcare, people that were, perhaps because they had access, came from more middle-class backgrounds. And as soon as we cut off the supply of prescription opioids, all of these people, were still left very dependent and addicted to these drugs, went into the illegal drug market and started using heroin. And once fentanyl got mixed into heroin, that kind of changed the demographic, and more recently, fentanyl being in lots of cocaine has shifted the demographics. And thinking about who uses, who snorts cocaine, and then who uses crack cocaine, and so those that trend has shifted the demographics even further. There are still certain areas in New York City, increasingly Black men, young Black men, South Bronx, and in certain parts of the northern portion of Staten Island have now increased in terms of their risk of overdose. But the thing that I'm trying to communicate to everyone is that because fentanyl is in things like Xanax now, or Adderall, where, we're talking about a teenager who's stressed out by the burdens of being an adolescent in school, doesn't know better, and is not intending on, snorting or injecting heroin, but is now just getting something that they think is a safe pharmaceutical product. That has created a different level of concern and a change in the demographic. So certainly a 16-year-old who doesn't typically use cocaine, heroin, et cetera, is at lower risk, significantly lower risk, but it's really changing.
Thank you for all that information. Any other questions for the doctor? All right. Really appreciate the very detailed answers to our questions and the very sobering, but I think incredibly important presentation. And I do remember your vaping presentation, so thank you for coming back. We're going to shift gears and do a little bit of discussion and eventually vote on a letter. But please come back anytime. And I see, Alan, you have your hand raised.
Thank you. Just a suggestion, perhaps. I think we might want to think about how do we get this out to our district. We're in the process of updating our principal contact list. And I was thinking perhaps maybe getting this presentation out as a informative letter of some kind. Superintendent, of course, and I'm sure the superintendent is probably aware of it, but sending out the presentation itself to the principals or parent teachers, contact people. So
I'm open to any opportunities to increase the awareness among superintendents. I've tried to hold back from sending this blanket message to all superintendents without having a relationship first. If you have relationships here with superintendents, with principals, we're very happy to have that introduction and to spread the word.
Yes.
We're, as some of the folks on this committee know, we're in the works of setting up a meeting with the superintendent for high schools in our district. So wow. We're looking to do that hopefully next week. We have a whole host of topics to talk about. And so I thought maybe in lieu of maybe a letter tonight, maybe we have our conversation with the superintendent about this and come up with a strategy based off of that person, their input as well. Just a suggestion.
That's a really good suggestion. I also wonder, Jesse, about the gentleman from DOE who presented on security cameras and then talked a little bit about the DOORS initiative, which we didn't necessarily have questions about. Is that a relationship that we have, or was that sort of like a one-time thing? You remember who I'm talking about? I'm blanking on his name.
I'm blanking on his name too, but we have him because that's the wonderfulness of Zoom. They showed up, so I have him, and I will track him down.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much, everybody. I'm going to go and hope that the next topic is uplifting.
Thank you, Doctor.
Yeah. Okay. Come back with something.
I'll try my best. It's hard.
You can all smile on.
My daughter every day when I come home from work is like, so what happened today in the emergency room? It's hard to share the stories that I see, but I'll come back and think of one, I promise.
Great to have you back again. Thank you.
All right. We have Hannah from West 45th Street. Hannah, is there anybody else we should be bringing on?
Oh, are you asking me?
Yeah, I was just wondering if there was anybody else that we should be bringing on besides yourself.
Oh, yeah, Christine, I believe is in the, is there. So Christine Bertay, so she could also help field any questions. Yeah, that would be great. And
Whenever,
should I just get started? I believe you all have the presentation to be able to share the screen. I don't have that functionality right now. If not, Christine should be able to.
I didn't know there was a presentation. I didn't see there was one, but maybe that was sent much earlier. I know we
Okay,
had up there. We go, Christine. Thank you.
There we go. It's up there right now.
Rescue.
Okay, wonderful. Well, so great to see you all. I am Hannah Wadowski. I'm a resident of 45th Street, West 45th Street. I've lived there for, God, I don't know, I think it's over 20 years now. Been very involved in the neighborhood and our block association. I'm on the board of Check Peds, and trash is something that has always been on my mind. As you'll see in our first photo, it's because it's right in front of our faces, and scenes that should be familiar to all of you and to all of our city. So I'm here to present today on a project that we're really thrilled to have gotten off the ground. It's a clear curb pilot for residential. And this has been an incredible partnership between DSNY, Check Peds, our neighborhood block association, and City Bin, who created the bins, which we will show you. So yeah, as you see in that photo, this is our city. Our sidewalks are very limited. Already narrow walkways are just made further inaccessible by mounds and mounds of trash. So in 2019, DSNY put out an RFEI, or request for expression of interest, for a clear curb pilot. We applied, we had this proposal, and creating trash corrals that would essentially move the trash from one side of the curb to the other side of the curb. So to park the trash essentially, instead of having it on our sidewalk space. CB4 at that point sent a letter of support for our submission, and we waited and we waited and we waited. And as we all know, things can take a long time within the city. And so we did as we do as activists and people committed to a cleaner, better, brighter, awesome city, took it into our own hands, and we did a guerrilla demo of the concept to show what is possible. Oh, Christine, you're showing our little film. Is there audio there, or just, okay. I'll let everyone see the film. But I don't hear any audio, Christine. I'm not sure if we're supposed to.
Yeah, it might not come through her speakers into our.
Okay. All right. Well, that's possible. In the audio, you can hear Christine. I think maybe I'm in it as well, talking about what you're seeing in the video right now, which is the mounds of trash which occupy our space. And the possibilities for their being changed. And again, what we had proposed initially was something quite simple, which was kind of just putting cones around and just really creating these corrals on our streets. And you'll see beyond this video, we can share the link to the video for you all to watch it. It's a great piece, what that looked like. But moving further along in the timeline, we in 2021, we began working actually with DOT towards starting a formal project. And in 2022, the project was actually funded with DSNY funds, and CheckPeds was selected as a partner with our Block Association, Hell's Kitchen Commons, the West 45th Street Block Association, and CheckPeds. I think I'm assuming most on the call know who we are and what we do, but we're a nonprofit. We were founded in 2005, and the idea is really to improve pedestrian safety and quality of life in our neighborhood. So the pilot itself, we've all probably seen all of the articles and hoopla about clean curb pilots that were underway for bids and in commercial buildings. But this idea, what we've presented here and what we're so excited to have happening, is a residential pilot. So that is the new part. And the idea, again, is to clear our walkways, minimize changes to DSNY and building staff workload. So to try to keep things, in the way trash is collected is they're stopping literally like so many different times on each street. And so this minimizes the number of times. We've all heard our mayor and our sanitation commissioner talk about rats. We've had our own conversation with rats. So the idea of containerization is one that we're hoping will eliminate that problem. And again, to improve the efficiency and reduce idling for these DSNY trucks as the workers are doing that work. I'd say the one thing that is not on here, which was included in the original RFEI, is also getting to the root of the problem and too much trash, and creating ways to minimize what our society, what we as neighbors are producing as trash. And so, I think the pilot being on West 45th Street, where we have two other very, very important projects, the food scrap collection in Matthews Palmer Park and the free store, the neighborhood sharing hub at the corner of 45th and 9th. I think that works towards that goal. So the plot design, the idea is to scatter these throughout the street. So it takes up 3 parking spaces on each side of the street, and that is serving 25 buildings. So they are these containers, they're placed together, and then they're accessed by all of the buildings that are closest to it. And placement of the collection of bins was determined by which buildings are creating the largest volume. So that's where they are placed closest. Each of the corrals has 9 containers, and again, they are on both sides of the streets, and they are scattered so that it minimizes the distance that any super would have to walk to carry the bags. So the pilot design, the containers design, they're made of steel. Again, that is where we try to create a less inviting habitat for our rat friends. There are dedicated containers for actual trash and for what we recycle. Each bin has a capacity for about 10 bags per bin. There is a door that's on the top, and there's a door that's on the bottom. I'm sorry, on the sides, on the front, facing the street. Those doors are all locked, and the access is given to the sanitation workers who are doing the pickup, and to the supers who are putting the trash that's collected as it always was at each building, and then the super places it inside the green bin. The green wrap on them, facilitates the maintenance, keeps them cleaner. And there are traffic blocks by each corral, which protects them from vehicles, which we know wreak havoc on our streets. The pilot operation, so we rolled this out. The first bins came to town and were placed in our actual streets in November of 2022. We displayed them and invited supers to come visit and assess and share input on them in the park prior to that. The keys and the combinations, we've experimented with different types of keys and locks. That those, again, as I mentioned previously, are distributed to the sanitation and the building staff. There is always, of course, a concern about cleanliness when we come discussing trash. So there is a supplemental company that comes after each pickup to clean both the inside and the outside of the bins. One of the primary reasons supers were so excited about this pilot was they don't want more summonses. They're berated with summonses for trash that they don't necessarily even have control over. So this has really minimized that. And the building staff and the DSNY project manager are actually in direct text communication. So that also creates this level of comfort and buy-in for the supers to be able to share their experiences, much of which has been very positive, any questions and any issues. So that communication has been key. We've obviously been reviewing the volume of trash and the needs, and so the number of bins were increased as a result of that. And likewise, the locking system is being upgraded. I know there's lots of debates about the pros and cons of the locking system, and many thoughts about that. Especially thinking about the counters and those who neatly go through our trash and generate their sources, reliable sources of income. But then, of course, there are the folks who create big messes on our streets, and so our supers and lots of folks are happy to see that they are locked. So just in terms of pilot results to date, I know our slide says sidewalks are 100% clean. That is truly aspirational, but I would say that the bags of trash are not on our streets, and they are at the corrals. If there is overload, they are in front of the green bins, still within that allotted space. We have had incredible positive feedback from building staff and owners. You can read this one quote. He says that it's the best thing that has ever happened. And that, he just thinks that they need more of them because they have so much garbage, but they think that it's working perfectly. So it's really great to get that kind of positive feedback from our supers, and folks in our neighborhood are quite happy as well about it. Passersby, we've had tours of it, and people really are blown away and want to know, when can we get this in our neighborhood? I think folks want even more access to these, is what we're hearing. What we're hearing from sanitation department is that they find streets are also much cleaner. And there are key project indicators that are being collected. But our challenge is that there still is no money that we know of allotted to this really important containerization in the 2024 budget. And so that is really what we would like to see. We have communities in other boroughs that are asking us to come present and talk about this so they can get a pilot going. But our city is ripe for this kind of change. We see it all over the world, and New York City should be a leader as well when it comes to this. So we think that money should be allocated to the budget to be able to test it on additional blocks. We have blocks begging for to be on the next pilot list. And also so that we can be working on modifying the design, thinking about bigger containers, remote locking systems. I'll add my, personal, thought that I, love to see aspects, of it, about focused on like reuse and sharing as well, or see other elements of that on our streets, because the containerization is hugely important. And I think we really need to be getting to the root of the problem as well, not only containerizing it. But so we are requesting that our council member will hold a hearing on the issue and support this ask. We are happy to come talk about it as necessary, again, sharing the feedback from our neighborhood, from our community, and this, conception of containerization in the street should really be a priority for our city. We're thrilled that the mayor came to see it and spoke so positively about it the other day. Again, we'd love to see other policies. I'm also on the Manhattan Solid Waste Advisory Board, and so their thoughts about compacting and bailing and other conclusions. But ultimately, we know that there is endless amounts of trash, much of it through composting and through sharing can be minimized, and we need to see more funding going towards containerization of what truly is trash, which we hope will become less. But in the meanwhile, we don't want it on our streets attracting rats and in our very limited, already very narrow sidewalk spaces. So thank you for this time. We're happy to field questions. Christine is also, huge kudos to Christine for, we all chatted about this idea, and she really shepherded it and stewarded it and navigated all of the relationships and the dynamics to bring it to life, which we're so thrilled has happened. So thank you.
Thank you very much for that presentation. We have at least 3 questions for y'all. And in the slim chance that anyone is not aware, Christine is a member of CB4. She's just not on this committee. So we'll go Charlie, and then Blake, and then Wendy to start.
Hey guys, just wanted to say really appreciate this presentation. I go to the playground at Matthews Palmer's all the time with my kids and walk up and down this specific block. And it's just been great, with a stroller to have a clear sidewalk and to see those green bins and to not see the piles of trash. So thanks for the update, and just, I would love this in my life. I know a lot of people feel the same way.
Yeah, I mean, I'm glad you brought up the strollers. I didn't get into the nitty gritty because I think this committee fully is aware. But the photo, there's a photo right near where I live, right in front of that sign with the children playing, leading towards Matthews Palmer Park. And forget about trying to fit a stroller through there. People have had to go into the street. 2 people can't even pass at the same time. 1 person can barely get by if it was regular, collection day and those bags were out there. So yes, thank you for sharing the stroller. And I'll, add the obvious for people who use wheelchairs as well. The real challenge that our narrow sidewalks pose, and with the trash bags on them. So,
Blake, you're up next.
Yeah, thank you so much for the presentation, and would love to see this on more streets as well. A couple of questions. One was just about the locks. Had it been tested without locks? And I'm just wondering what the difference is between, obviously the bags on the sidewalk also are not locked. And if the department had thought about just not locking it, if that's causing a lot of the, time suck for folks picking, the DSNY employees picking up the bags. And the second question was just, if DSNY had given any indication of what their plans were as next steps on the pilot.
Anna, you want me to take that?
Yeah, I was just going to say, Christine, do you want to field that? Because you've been in closer contact with us.
So Blake, the lock has been heavily discussed back and forth, as Hannah said. Sanitation is very, very intent on locking everything. And some of the concerns is having, homeless people foraging into the bags and exploding the bags, or homeless people sleeping in the containers, or people putting a bomb in the containers. I don't know. They are very emotional about that. And they think this is very, very important. From day first, they insisted on that. The related issue is what you said, is that, it takes a long time to open all the doors. And it's not very efficient. So this tension is there right now, and it's not resolved. It's we were going to possibly do 1 month without locks to see how it works and see what changes would do to remove the locks. But I can tell you the sanitation department would not be happy about it. And you had the second question about the bags, you said?
It was just about
what the mayor wants to do about that. So what's happening next is that the sanitation department has started, as you heard, maybe a big study, which is called the McKinsey study, where they hired McKinsey to do a big study of how to containerize everything. And we understand that they are, working on the report. And maybe, I don't have a timeline for when the report is coming back. I don't know whether it's 1 month, 3 months, I don't know. And that report is supposed to say what will be the next version. And in the video that I didn't share, the mayor this weekend said, well, we love, we want containers and we are working on containers 2.0, which is really what should be the final design of the containers, but he didn't volunteer any timeline.
Got it. Thank you.
Wendy and then Leslie.
Thanks so much for coming. I'm a huge fan of this program. I'm curious, and apologies if you mentioned this, but I know you mentioned that it is not included in the sanitation budget for 2024. I'm curious whether you approach sanitation and whether they gave you any reasons as to why they're not willing to provide any funding for this.
They didn't explain it exactly, but they said, the project costs too much money, which we don't know because we don't have all the details. And it certainly takes a while to go through the block. But, I think what it needs is it needs to have different containers. And by different, I mean maybe bigger, maybe, it needs to be studied. But I think that they have put everything aside essentially to put all their eggs into the report. And what is going to be next is what is in the report. I think it's good because we demonstrated there that people were ready to share, that it was working, they were ready to move things from one place to another. And this was really very satisfying from that standpoint,
Thanks.
Leslie, and then I have a question if nobody else does.
Thank you, Kit. Hannah, I remember when you came to ACES, I remember this specific presentation 4 years ago. We were at Fulton in the community room. I remember this. And I remember Inga was the co-chair, Alan, remember? And we talked about this. I think this idea is absolutely brilliant. I think this shouldn't even be an issue. This is not about pedestrian space. It's not about rats. It's just about a more efficient, better way to run the city, period. I was a fan of it back then. Alan, I think we wrote a letter back then. I think we should write another letter, even stronger, reiterating. And I think there are a few points that, as this evolves, I even envision an app lock, right? And not a lock and key, yes. Something like that. It's going to go, everything's going to go forward and it will have, it will get better. So anyone, this problem, those will work itself out as the program evolves, hopefully. I also think it will somewhat solve a problem of smaller buildings where supers have to stay later now to put out the trash. Now they won't have to do that because they can put it out anytime in these bins. So it will not be a burden for those smaller buildings that they are complaining might be a possibility now. So I don't know if it's too early. Kit, you said you wanted to ask a question.
But Leslie,
I don't know if it's too early to do a motion.
in fact, you are pointing something which is essential, and we didn't discuss that here, Leslie, is that with those containers, the staff can put their garbage in anytime during the pickup. So what it does is really remove all the garbage from their cellars, and they have less rats. It's much cleaner. They have more space, you know, so it's really a very big benefit for them. For the and the supers have told us that. So you're making a really good point, Leslie.
And Hannah, I remember if I asked you if we could have it on 55th Street, and you told me no, not yet.
Right,
I'm
know.
still thinking about that.
Right, I was hoping that we would get to a second pilot, but right now they are stopping everything to go to the big thing.
And Leslie, just to answer your question, let's let everyone get through their questions, and then I can come back to you when it's time to make a motion. Katie, do you want to ask your question, and then maybe I can close this out?
Sure. So 2 questions. And I wasn't here 4 years ago, so I didn't hear the first presentation. So I apologize if I don't know all the facts here. But do the rules? Are these containers designed for all buildings trash? Like, for example, I live in a really big residential building, and just the idea, like, there's a lot of trash in that building, and are they supposed to? I mean,
well, so
is that going to all fit in? I mean,
well, first of all, the number of containers, right? You see on each of the pod, the number of containers was calculated based on the amount of trash. So it was not just we are putting 9 and that's it. It was like, okay, in this building and between those 5 buildings, they have so much trash and we can fit it. So the number of containers is proportional to the number of the size of the trash, right? Okay. So that's one thing.
But Christine, so just to be clear, so are you saying that, like, in near really big residential buildings where there are, like, whatever,
right, 300
apartments or something, that then there would be, I don't know how many, I'm just guesstimating,
more
like
boxes.
15 bins or something? Like,
yes. And this is one of the things where we need to have a discussion with the manufacturer, and she's there. It's like, you know, those containers which were put there were off the shelf. So they were containers which had been designed for individual houses and not for this. And now they have been put there just to do the job. But while we are looking at that, you see, oh, we could have each of the containers twice as big, you know. So
okay, which actually then goes
right. The containers need to be retooled a little bit for this use because they were not designed initially for this use.
Which goes, I guess, to my second question, because I can't remember which one of you mentioned it, but that maybe the containers have to be bigger. And I was already thinking, like, holy smokes, like, you're already taking up, just on your block or where the pilot was, like 6 parking spaces, right? And I found myself thinking, like, okay, so, you know, I live in a really big building, and there are lots of really big buildings. And then presumably then they would lose any or many parking spaces. And I'm thinking, like, you know, I live in a building where there are obviously some businesses on the first floor, grocery store, drugstore, whatever stuff. And I'm thinking, like, already there are huge issues about deliveries to those businesses. And I don't know, frankly, part of me feels like absolutely we should have to keep all of our trash in our basement and not be screwing up, you know, not be putting it outside. So maybe this would work for smaller buildings, but not for the really big buildings. But it sounds like your proposal is that it should be for everybody's trash. Is that right?
Not really. I mean, you know, what we're saying is that what we know is one size is not going to fit everyone. And do you remember that we did the sanitation working group? Now I'm with my hat as CB4. We did the sanitation working group, which said, you know, for different building, you are going to have different requirements, right? Right. So the very large building probably do not use this solution. This is more for medium-sized buildings. So for example, in this there is one building which has 61 apartments, which is pretty big already, right? So maybe you go up to 100 apartments, I don't know. But we would have to look at that and say, what is the limit? The northern, the higher limit. And then for the very large building, you need a different solution. Because you're right, it would take too much space.
Yeah. Okay.
Right. And I would just echo that. I mean, I am so eager to see what these pros at McCord, because I feel very passionately that this containerization model, in order to be sizable and relevant and most appropriate for each building size, it really needs to be part of holistic thinking about our trash. So just compacting all of our trash, just bailing all of our trash in for a large building like yours, or putting like endless parking spaces worth of these metal containers is not the solution, but really thinking about waste diversion and having other things built into the system, because the problem is our volume of trash. That is really the problem that we have to get to the root of. This containerization model is addressing one element of that. Mm-hmm. And so it really needs to be part of the holistic planning that's taking place, looking at the root of the problem as well, and creating models that will work for a building of your size. The buildings, I don't know how big your building is and which one it is, but I can share that some of the large buildings in our neighborhood, Gotham West, for probably one of the best examples, is I've counted, I think one time it was like 13 parking spaces worth of trash, on the sidewalk, not in parking spaces, but like that was the length of the trash that was there. But on any given night, if you go through it, some of the bags and what's left at the end, there is an incredible volume of totally perfectly usable, wonderful, shareable, expensive, functional items that should not be making their way into containers and bigger and bigger and bigger containers. Mm-hmm. We need to be coming up with solutions that minimize that. So I'm pushing here for the purpose of our containerization, which I am incredibly passionate about and really think we need throughout our city. I will share that it really needs to be part of a holistic plan that is going to be aimed at reducing and diverting what it is that we're currently putting in the trash.
Mm-hmm. Great, thank you.
I think this might be the last question, but I know that in other places, especially not in this country, there's automation between the trucks or the vehicles that are picking up the containers and the containers themselves. My impression is there's been different pilots in different parts of the city. Have we tested that out here? Because it feels like, to the point that was just made around like a holistic solution, if we're containerizing stuff, that's like a critical step, but like to a certain degree, like a baby step.
So I think that's, first of all, I think that the mayor has announced that they are going to start using a mechanical arms to pick up the containers in Queens. I mean, in streets where this is one single family house. So you have very few of them. I think I heard that, but I'm not 100% sure. And that's the $1 million question for the study. What are they going to propose? Are they going to propose to go to the mechanical arms, or are they going to propose to go to something else? And to this day, when you talk to different people of sanitation, you get different answers. So I really do not know what is going to be proposed.
I think it might be even more than a $1 million question, Christine.
Yes.
So thank you very much for the presentation and for answering our questions. Leslie, I promised I would come back to you if there's a motion that you want to make. I do want to caution you. I believe that I wrote the letter that you referred to, that you said this next one needs to be stronger than. So you're up.
I'm reading it right now, actually. We did have the letter. It's a great letter. This could be the best letter I've ever written, that was ever written, Kit. No, I think it would just be, I know I'm reading it and there's some, I mean, there are little facts and little suggestions that would be different, obviously. But that would be my suggestion, that this committee would support these efforts, support it in the budget, which obviously would then be propelled in our budget planning. So I mean, I don't know as far as the points you would want to make or that you think are important to add, but whatever those points are, I would be in favor of it, just because I think this committee is overall in favor of the program or the pilot program. So I would leave the points to you.
I have thoughts here, but does anyone else want to sort of layer in things that are important to include in an updated letter supporting containerization? Summarizing probably the learnings of the pilot so far.
Maybe we could ask for an update on the timing for the new report, just to express the urgency of solving this problem at a larger scale.
My memory is patchy at best, but I don't think we spoke to the critical piece of it being not one size fit all, and integrating sort of community and neighborhood and block by block input on sort of how to do this in a way that makes sense. Ultimately, like, there's going to be hard decisions because space is zero sum, and some people will want parking spaces and some people will want containerization. But it does feel like this is going to need to look different, block to block and neighborhood to neighborhood, in order for it to work. And I think we probably, as Community Board 4, would like to be, asked our opinion on what it looks like in our district, and we want block associations, et cetera, to at least be able to share their point of view in other neighborhood organizations, community-based organizations as well. So I think that would be healthy to have some language around. Any other ideas that folks want to float? All right. Leslie, are you cool writing this letter? Assuming we all vote in favor of it?
Well, since you wrote the first one, maybe you can just write this one with a little bit of edit.
It's probably the strongest letter I've ever written. I can't.
Actually, I wouldn't mind. I think WPE is light this month. I'm going to double check because I might have a letter or two from there. But
we can work it out offline.
Perfect.
All in favor of us, Charlie, did you have something? I think just voting. All in favor of us voting for a motion to write another letter in support of containerization, updated with the items that have been discussed. Looks like mostly everybody, including myself. Anyone opposed?
Can I have a clarification?
Go ahead,
We'll be
Sabrina.
talking about funding this, right?
Yes.
PNEA as well.
Anyone opposed? Sabrina is present, not eligible. Anyone besides Sabrina present, not eligible? Any abstentions? All right. I believe that was our last planned agenda item. Anything in the new business category, or should we all call it a night? All right. Thank you to the CheckPads team for coming back and reporting out to us. We can all go about our evenings. Appreciate everyone attending, and see you all same time, same place next month.
Can I get a motion?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Everyone who's in favor, you can just sign off of Zoom. Thanks, everybody.